This is Hirasaki. This story is all about what if Naruto casted Hiraishin as a combat tool. A few angry words from Neji lead to a great many changes. Hiashi-sama, Naruto bowed once more. I ask you to make a bargain with me. To be with the girl he loves, he makes a bet. The stakes? Only his future and his dream. Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard! Chapter 18, The Talk. Have you ever been up here before? Sarutobi asked. Naruto couldn't help but laugh. Are you kidding, old man? I come up here all the time. They were standing atop the Hokage monument, overlooking the village. I really like coming here at sunset. It's just beautiful. The Hokage nodded happily. Oh, I agree with you, Naruto. I have always found the view here breathtaking. They both stood there for a moment, just enjoying the sight. The Hokage then produced his pipe and carefully lit it. You know, Naruto, you really should be a bit more respectful to Jiraiya. You are going to be his apprentice and you do need to treat him with a certain amount of respect as your sensei. Naruto took on a stubborn look and crossed his arms over his chest. I don't want that pedophile for a sensei. Kakashi actually wants to teach me for once, why can't I just have him? The Hokage took a long puff and slowly released it. I'm afraid the time when Kakashi was your official sensei is now over. The two of you will have different responsibilities. In any case, you should feel extremely honored to have Jiraiya as your sensei. Naruto just shook his head. Why do I get all the perverts for senseis? The Hokage chuckled. Naruto looked up at him and frowned. Can you just tell me why he should be my sensei? I mean, I never even met him until a couple weeks ago, and then he just wanted to jab me in the stomach. Naruto, the Hokage began seriously. Jiraiya is a Sannin, and a bit of a legend both inside and outside this village. That guy? The Hokage nodded. Not only is he powerful and well respected, he is also a great instructor. You do know, don't you, that he was the sensei of the Yondaime Hokage? If you were to be his apprentice, he could teach you everything he taught the Yondaime. In addition, he is highly motivated. That old guy really taught the fourth Hokage? Naruto clearly found it hard to believe. He really did, Naruto. Naruto frowned and thought about it. Finally, he gave a grudging nod. Well, I guess if he was good enough to teach one Hokage, he's good enough to teach another. The Hokage eyed the young ninja carefully. Naruto, tell me why you want to be Hokage. Ha? Sarutobi took the pipe out of his mouth and looked down at him very seriously. I know it is your dream, but I want to know why it is. Please tell me why you want so badly to be Hokage. I want people to recognize me. Naruto answered without a second's thought. I want to be acknowledged and have the villagers not look at me with hatred in their eyes. He paused. But you know, I think that's finally starting to happen. I think people are finally starting to really see me. Are they? Hearing Naruto say that pleased him greatly. The boy had not deserved the neglect and cruelty he'd received growing up. The thought that the villagers were finally beginning to see him as a person and ninja rather than as a demon gave him hope. People left some gifts outside my door. At first, I thought it had to be a trick. They left some food and I figured it was probably poisoned. The matter-of-fact way Naruto said that made Sarutobi grimace. But it wasn't, they really were just gifts. And on the way here a lot of people smiled at me. Naruto was still trying to get used to the idea that maybe, just maybe, the whole village didn't hate him anymore. Seeing just how much just a little recognition meant to him made Sarutobi wonder if things had been even worse for Naruto than he's imagined. Do you ever hate them? Sarutobi asked quietly. What? Do you ever hate them, Naruto? Sarutobi clarified. Certainly, If anyone had the right to, it would be you. Do you imagine becoming Hokage and punishing them one day for the way they treated you? Naruto looked shocked and quickly shook his head. Never. I want to win their respect and make them see me. I don't want to punish them. I want to be like you, old man. I want to be fair and just and always protected the village. And I want people to respect me for it, the same way they do you. Sarutobi was very good at reading people, and he believed him. He truly is a worthy candidate. I am so relieved. You have no idea how glad I am to hear that, Naruto. He turned from the boy to once more look out over the village. Naruto, do you know how old I was when I became Hokage? Nope. I was your age, just 13. Wow. That must have been like a really long time ago then. The Hokage couldn't help but laugh. Yes, it was. The village has grown and changed quite a lot in that time. Whole generations have been born. I have seen many fine people come and go, yet with each new life the village grows and becomes more. He looked back at Naruto. Do you know that I was the student of the Nidaime Hokage? Both he and his brother the Shodai brought me to this very spot to inform me I was to be the Sandaime. Do you know what they said to me? Naruto shook his head. No, what? He was eager to hear. The Hokage smiled as his eyes seemed to take on a faraway look. Each and every Konoha comrade is a part of my own body. The villagers believe in me and I believe in all of them. That is what being Hokage means. You must love the village and protect those who trust in you. Then you must nurture them, those to whom you can entrust the future. Sarutobi looked away again as memories of his teacher and of the great Shodai flooded back. For just a moment he remembered exactly what it had been like. To be 13 and to be told by two of the greatest ninja alive that you were to be Hokage. That is what it means to be Hokage, Naruto. He said quietly as he looked out over the village. You must love and protect the people. You must give everything for them. Do you still wish to be Hokage? He didn't understand what was happening, or how things had gotten so serious. But somehow Naruto knew that this was a very important question. Yes, his voice shook just a bit. I want to be the one to protect them. Very well, Sarutobi turned around to face Naruto once more. As you like to point out, Naruto, I am a very old man. I retired more than a decade ago, and since returning I have grown very weary with the demands of my position. I have decided to retire again, this time for good. But I will wait 3 more years to give my successor the time he needs to grow into the man who can replace me. It will not be easy. Sarutobi warned. It will require a huge commitment and total dedication. The Hokage must be acknowledged as the strongest ninja in the village. You have 3 years to become that, and to prove yourself a worthy leader. Naruto gulped, suddenly feeling very nervous. What do you mean? A ghost of a smile touched the Hokage's lips. In 3 years' time, if I judge you worthy, you will be Hokage. Hiashi gave them both a simple nod of approval. I am very pleased with both of you. Your promotions do our clan honor. Thank you, father, Hinata said. Arigato Hiashi-sama, Neji said, stiff and proud. I expect both of you to work very hard and to become Jonin before too long. Hiashi informed them. Hinata wanted to groan, but knew better. She had actually hoped her promotion might earn her a short respite. She really should have known better. Neji thought nothing of Hayashi's expectations. He wanted to be a Jonin soon for his own reasons. Hiashi-sama, with your permission, I would like to be free tonight. I intend to have a date with Tenten. Hiashi nodded immediately. Of course, I think you and she make a fine couple. He had met the girl before and approved of her. She was a fine ninja and might make a fine wife for Neji one day. Arigato, Hiashi-sama. Then Neji turned to Hinata and spoke in an innocent voice. And will you be seeing your boyfriend Naruto tonight, Lady Hinata? She snapped her head around and stared at her cousin. He'd done it on purpose. Nothing he had ever done, not even his behavior at the preliminaries, had even been so deliberately cruel. Boyfriend? Hiashi frowned and turned his full attention to his daughter. What is Neji talking about? Hinata looked up into her father's face and braced herself. Uzumaki Naruto and I have been dating for the past month, ever since the day after the preliminaries. Hiashi did not begin shouting at her, that was not his way. He was the clan head of the Hyuga, and as such he was always restrained and dignified, even in private. But the frown and the darkening of his face was enough to tell his daughter he was furious. Did I extend you permission to date anyone, Hinata? She gulped. No, father, but I. You are the oldest daughter of the Hyuga main branch. You are the nearest thing this village has to a princess. Who you are seen with affects not only your own status but that of the entire clan. I forbid you to see or speak to this boy ever again. He is beneath you and not worthy of your time. Father, you don't even know him. Hinata protested. I know of him, and that is quite enough. My decision is final, you will not see that boy again. Neji grinned. Hinata saw that and would remember. She looked at her father's face. No, her voice was firm, there was no weakness or tremble to it at all. A look of surprise filled Hayashi's face. She had never once uttered a word of defiance to him. What did you say? I said no, father, I will not stop seeing him. I love him and I want to be with him even if it is without your approval. He stared at her in complete shock. Love? What does a 13-year-old child know of love? Hiashi demanded. I know that he cares for me and would never ever hurt me. When I look at him, I feel courage, and when I am with him, I am happy. I have never been as happy as I have been in the short time we have been together, and I refuse to give up being with him. Whatever you may think, you feel that boy is completely unworthy of you. He is lower than the dirt. He is going to be Hokage one day. She shot back. She really couldn't stand it when people insulted him, even her own father. She could stand anything directed at her, but she refused to let others insult him. He killed 50 enemy ninja in the battle yesterday and was promoted by the Hokage to Chunin just as we were. If you think our promotions were impressive, then you must think the same of his. He is much stronger ninja than either me or Neji, and more than worthy of me. Honestly, she always wondered if she was worthy of him. That weakling is not better than me. Neji snapped. How dare you even suggest such a thing? Hinata looked at him and refused to back down an inch. You killed 15 enemy ninja yesterday. I know, because you haven't stopped bragging about it. Well, Naruto killed 50, so I think that would make him at least 3 times the ninja you are. He truly killed 50 enemy ninja? Hiashi asked. Hinata could hear the doubt and answered firmly. He did, and he was promoted for it. The Hokage also announced that he was to be apprenticed to the great Jiraiya. She wasn't sure what to make of the man and the weird claims against him, but she knew his reputation. Isn't that just the sort of ninja I should be with? Hiashi stopped for a moment and considered. He knew what was in Naruto, of course, but was intelligent enough to understand the jailer was not the prisoner. His main objection was not that Naruto had the Kyuubi. In his eyes, access to such a power was a plus. No, his objection was that the boy was an orphan and a troublemaker. Surely such a boy would never amount to anything. And yet, to have killed that many enemy ninja truly was extraordinary, a feat certainly deserving of promotion. He had wondered at the sudden vast improvement his daughter had shown in the past month. He had naturally assumed his own influence to have been responsible for it. But was it possible that this boy had some influence on her as well? He had never imagined his frail daughter would ever have the strength to actually oppose him. Yet here she was, showing courage in her defiance of him. Was the boy really responsible for that too? And he was apprenticed to Jiraiya? Any ninja in the village would kill for such an opportunity. Why would the Hokage and Jiraiya arrange that? Hiashi came to a decision. I want to meet this boy and talk to him. Invite him to dinner tonight. Yes, father. Neji left Hayashi's study amazed that Naruto would actually be allowed to have dinner here. He consoled himself with the thought that the loud, rude, orange-loving Baka would quickly find himself thrown into the street. And Hinata would probably be betrothed and locked in her room until she turned 16 and old enough to marry. Neji. He came to a halt and turned around to look at his cousin. That she was angry was obvious. He couldn't help but smirk. I am sorry for the trouble I caused you and your boyfriend. It must have slipped out. Nothing you say ever slips out. Hinata stated. Every word is always deliberate and calculated. You said that with the intent of breaking Naruto and me up. If you say so, he replied calmly. It was true and it wasn't important enough to bother denying. Neji, she spoke slowly and deliberately. I have never done anything to hurt you, with the exception of activating your seal. And for that I sincerely apologize to you. He frowned. Are you expecting an apology from me? She shook her head. No, an apology would be pointless. You deliberately tried to ruin my relationship with Naruto, and for that I will never forgive you. She walked past him and said 3 words that were deliberate and calculated. I hate you. Chapter 19, The Bargain. Naruto was trying not to jump up and down in frustration. But why can't I tell anyone? He began whining. Can't I just tell Iruka-sensei of Hinata-chan? Jiraiya and Sarutobi both shook their heads. Following their talk, the Hokage had taken Naruto to a house in one of Konoha's better neighborhoods. There Jiraiya had been waiting for them. I have already told you Naruto, Sarutobi said patiently. That my intentions must remain a secret. Only the 3 of us know what I plan, and that is how it must remain. But why? Naruto complained. This had been his dream ever since he'd first learned what a Hokage was. His natural instinct was to tell everyone. Because, though it pains me to say it, there are still many in this village who would oppose my plan. Were I to announce it publicly, they would spend the next 3 years trying to undermine you. Naruto wanted to argue, but he knew how right the Hokage was. Even if people were starting to come around, he knew that didn't mean everyone. Listen kid, Jiraiya said. Just look at it as a test. A Hokage has to be able to keep secrets, even ones he really wants to share. This will just be a test of your ability to be trusted with classified information. Naruto was reminded of the Forest of Death and his decision to look at the scroll in violation of orders. It was ironic to think that traitor Kabuto had saved him from disaster. He slowly nodded and reined himself in. All right, I get it. Good Naruto, Sarutobi said in a deep and serious tone. Because if you do tell anyone, that will automatically disqualify you. Are you kidding, old man? Naruto looked at the Hokage in surprise. You'd do that? Sarutobi nodded. Yes, I would, Naruto. This is no child's game. If you are serious about becoming Hokage, then you will need to prove yourself in all sorts of ways. Understand this, Naruto, all I have given you is the opportunity, nothing more. If in 3 years' time I am not convinced you are the best possible candidate, then I will not select you. Naruto grinned fearlessly. Don't worry, old man, in 3 years I'll be a really powerful ninja. That's only part of it, kid. Jiraiya said. What do you mean? What else is there? Naruto demanded. A Hokage is a leader, not just a great ninja. Jiraiya said. You'll need to prove your ability to lead others and to make good decisions. You will also have to learn to be much more diplomatic than you are now. Sarutobi warned. What do you mean? What's wrong with the way I am now? Naruto asked. Kid, if you go around calling foreign lords or other Kages perverts, then before long Konoha will be without business and likely at war. Jiraiya said. Naruto looked stubborn. You expect me to lie and kiss up to people? Sometimes, Jiraiya nodded. Lies are the grease that keeps society running smoothly. Grease is nasty and disgusting. Naruto said. That's true, kid, Jiraiya said. But any piece of machinery without some will grind to a halt before long. Naruto, Sarutobi said. You are going to discover that not everything a Hokage does is fun or glorious. He frowned a bit. I have not even mentioned paperwork yet. The fact is, a large part of what I do is simply acting as the face of the village. When people meet with me, I am not simply one man, but in a way, I am Konoha. Everything I do or say will reflect upon the village. And do you really want people connecting Konoha with someone who goes around calling everyone pervert? Jiraiya asked. Hey Aro-sennin, I'm just being honest. Naruto said. That is not necessarily a good thing, Naruto. A large part of being ninja is deception. Sarutobi said. I have met many important people I did not like or trust. But I was just as friendly to them as anyone else. Tell me, Naruto, would I have been better served by letting them know my true feelings? Naruto shook his head. No. He knew about deception and not showing what you really thought. He could talk about being honest, but the smiling confident face that he showed the world was a lie. He had grown up lonely and miserable, and had learned early on not to show it. He smiled and acted sure of himself, when deep down he had always wondered why people treated him the way they did. He had always assumed that there had to be something wrong with him when everyone seemed to hate him. But he never ever showed anyone that self-doubt. I think I understand. Well, that's good. Jiraiya said. So, tell me, kid, what do you think of this house? Jiraiya had given him a quick tour. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a huge kitchen, and a large fenced-off yard that even had a pool and jacuzzi. It's really great, Naruto replied honestly. Glad to hear it. He reached into a pocket and tossed out some keys. 'Cause it's yours now. Naruto cut the keys automatically. Say what? No apprentice of mine is living in some crappy hole-in-the-wall apartment. Jiraiya said. Naruto gave the older man a suspicious look. Well, no way am I living with you, you dirty old man. He tossed the keys back. Jiraiya caught them and glared. I've told you before, kid, I'm not that way. I happen to own 4 houses in this village. And I haven't lived in any of them for 13 years, they're just investments to me. I won't be living here, this place will be yours. He tossed the keys back. Naruto caught them and tossed them back again. I don't want it. Starting to get a bit annoyed, Jiraiya threw the keys back a bit harder. Why? You prefer living in that dump you call home now? Naruto didn't appreciate the dig and threw the keys straight back as hard as he could. I don't need anybody's pity. It's not pity, you idiot. I have 4 houses that are empty. It would be plain stupid for you to keep living in a crap trap when you can live here. Jiraiya flicked his wrist back and threw the keys in the way he would have thrown a kunai. Catching the flying metal, Naruto actually winced slightly with pain. My apartment's been good enough until now. He was about to throw the keys back when Sarutobi caught his wrist. That's true, Naruto, Sarutobi agreed. But wouldn't you rather meet with Hinata and other friends here rather than at your current home? Naruto frowned. He remembered how embarrassed he'd felt when Hinata first came over. This place was a few steps above his apartment. Hinata would probably like it better. He sighed. You don't play fair, old man. Sarutobi released his wrist with a grin. That is just one more skill you will need to learn. Anyway, don't feel too guilty, kid, you'll be paying rent. Sarutobi immediately turned and gave his student a look. A small rent. Sarutobi kept looking at him. Jiraiya coughed. You know what, kid? Why don't you stay here rent-free? I think that would be a fine idea. Sarutobi agreed. Naruto chuckled a little. So, old man, you going to show me how to guilt people into doing things? Right then the doorbell rang. Jiraiya opened it. Hinata immediately bowed to the man. Pardon me, Jiraiya-sama, but I was told Naruto was here? Hey, Hinata-chan. Naruto came over to greet her. Naruto-kun, without even waiting to be invited in, she rushed up to Naruto and grabbed a hold of him. Naruto was caught off guard by how forward she was being. Naruto-kun, I need to talk to you. Is it important, Hinata? Sarutobi asked. There were a few things Jiraiya and I were wanting to discuss with him. Surprised to see the Hokage there as well, she bowed to him. I beg pardon, Hokage-sama, but it is very important. May I have just a few minutes alone with Naruto, please? Sarutobi nodded and pointed to a door. What's going on, Hinata-chan? Naruto asked. In private, she insisted. She dragged him into the room and shut the door. Sarutobi could see the look on his student's face and shook his head. Don't even think it, they're only 13. Jiraiya chuckled. She's probably telling him that they've been apart for hours and that she misses him. Their conversation came to an abrupt end as they heard a high-pitched girlish wail come from the room. What? Came the girlish cry. It was followed almost immediately by a loud thump. Naruto-kun! Hinata's shouted. Both men immediately hurried to the door and opened it. There, lying unconscious on the floor, was Naruto with Hinata kneeling over him. What happened here? Sarutobi demanded. Hinata looked up guiltily. I just told him something. What could you say that could make him react like that? Jiraiya asked. My father insists on meeting him tonight at dinner. Yeah, that would do it. Jiraiya said. When Naruto came to Hinata, explained to him what had happened. Naruto immediately swore to beat the crap out of Neji. Naruto expected Hinata to tell him not to, but to his surprise she just nodded her head. We only have a few hours to get you ready. Hinata informed him. Naruto had been in the middle of war. He had faced down Orochimaru in single combat. He had faced angry mobs crying for his blood. He thought he'd known what fear was. But the thought of having to face Hiashi made him want to shake and run for cover. Hinata-chan, I don't think I can do this. I've never been invited to someone's home before. I don't know anything about how to behave through a formal dinner. Naruto-kun, you can do this. All you have to do is behave the way you did on our first date. When we're eating, just pay attention to me and do what I do. Hinata said. Your dad is going to hate me. Naruto said with a glum certainty. No, he won't, Hinata insisted. My father is a hard and formal man, but he is also fair. Just do your best, Naruto-kun, and I'm sure everything will work out fine. I believe Jiraiya and I can help as well. Sarutobi said. Hiashi and Hinata were waiting in the private dining room just at 6 as the servant approached. Hiashi was surprised to see more than one guest trailing her. Hiashi-sama, the woman spoke at the entrance to the dining room. May I present Uzumaki Naruto, Lord Jiraiya, and the Lord Hokage. The woman smoothly withdrew and left the 5 of them in the ornate room. Hiashi immediately bowed to the 2 men. Your presence here honors me, Hokage-sama, Jiraiya-sama, I had not expected you. In turn, both the Hokage and Jiraiya returned the bows. I hope you do not object to our being here. The Hokage said. I am the nearest thing Naruto has to a guardian and thought it only proper that I be present. Jiraiya smiled. Since Naruto here is my new apprentice, I just thought I should come watch out for him. Besides, Jiraiya chuckled. I'm not one to pass up the chance at a free meal. Naruto stepped forward and gave Hiashi a deep bow. The usual orange jumpsuit was gone. He had on his long black leather jacket, a cream-colored shirt, and dark brown pants. Hinata had picked out what to wear and told him what he should say. Hiashi-sama, I sincerely thank you for your hospitality in inviting me here. You honor me greatly and I hope to prove worthy of your great kindness. Hiashi was surprised at how well the boy was behaving. From everything he'd heard, he'd expected him to be walking on the ceiling with a can of spray paint in his hand. We will see. Hiashi said neutrally. If you are ready, dinner is prepared. The five of them sat at one end of a long dining table. Hiashi had intended to have Naruto sitting right next to him, but etiquette required he give the two closest seats to the Hokage and Jiraiya. Naruto and Hinata sat across from each other at the next set of chairs. Hiashi did not immediately begin questioning Naruto. He decided to bide his time. Through the meal he spoke mostly with the Hokage and Jiraiya, almost completely ignoring the two children. At least he seemed to be ignoring them. He kept a careful eye on both of them throughout. It was clear early on that Naruto had no idea as to what the proper etiquette was of eating a formal meal. He could see how he copied Hinata in placing his napkin and in determining which utensil to use for the salad or the soup. Naruto was an orphan, so it was understandable that he did not have the best manners. But it was obvious the boy was trying very hard. Something else was obvious as well. Hinata was smiling. It had been a very long time since he'd seen his daughter smile so much. But it seemed as though every time she looked at the boy her mood lightened. He again wondered if it was Naruto that had brought on his daughter's recent changes. Hiashi patiently waited until the main meal was cleared away and they were awaiting the cake, then he struck. Naruto, Hiashi said. Can you please tell me your intentions towards my daughter? Naruto looked at him nervously. He knew he was on his own. The Hokage and Jiraiya had come to show their support, but he needed to answer on his own. My only intentions are to spend time with her, Hiashi-sama. You mean as a friend? Naruto gulped. No. If not as a friend, then in what manner do you wish to spend time with her? Though Hayashi's Byakugan was not active, his pale eyes seemed to bore into him. Naruto steadied himself and answered. As her boyfriend. There was a very long drawn-out pause. The silence was complete as Hiashi slowly sat back in his seat, his eyes never leaving Naruto. I see, Hiashi finally said. And is it true that you have been seeing her in this manner for a full month's time now? Hi, Naruto answered. And why did you not first ask permission to date my daughter? Hiashi-sama, I did not know that was required. I asked Hinata and she wanted to go out with me, I thought that was enough. Hiashi frowned and Naruto began feeling almost sick. Hinata is no ordinary girl. She is the eldest daughter of the Hyuga main branch, and as such is likely to be the next clan head. I have had offers for her hand in marriage from the time of her birth. I have also received an untold number of requests for formal dates. I have refused them all. I have never intended her to date anyone except her future husband. Tell me, Naruto, why should I allow you a privilege that I have denied to princes and lords? Naruto pulled back his chair and stood up. He then bowed to the man. Hiashi-sama, if I have offended you then for that I truly apologize and am sorry. As for why you should let me be with her, I can only tell you this. Your daughter is more precious to me than my own life. I feel truly special when I am with her, and even though it hasn't been that long I would be miserable and heartbroken if I couldn't be with her. Hiashi-sama, I swear to you that I would never hurt your daughter or allow her to be hurt. I would give my life to protect her. Hiashi listened to the earnest plea, but slowly shook his head. I am afraid that is not good enough. While I can see by your body language that you mean every word, it is not sufficient. Even if you do care deeply for my daughter, I am afraid you are not the sort who can be with her. It's because of what's inside me, isn't it? He looked down at the table and felt bitterness threaten to completely overwhelm him. It's not fair. Why am I being punished for this again? Sarutobi and Jiraiya looked a bit worried, but Hiashi answered smoothly. No, whatever you might think, it has nothing to do with that. Hinata was a bit confused, wondering what exactly her father and Naruto meant. Then why? Naruto demanded. His self-control beginning to fray a bit. He had finally found someone who really accepted him, and he was happy. Now someone else was threatening to take away his precious person. Why am I not good enough? Because you have no clan, no money, and no power. As head of the Hyuga clan, I will decide who my daughter marries. And whoever that person will be, he will either be a very wealthy man or a very powerful ninja. Well, I'm going to be Hokage one day. Naruto proclaimed. Isn't that good enough? Again, Hiashi shook his head. Claims are very easy to make. If I truly believed you would be a Hokage one day, then certainly you would have my blessing. Naruto looked pleadingly at Sarutobi, but the Hokage gave no reaction at all. You know, Jiraiya spoke up. You might not want to dismiss the kid's claim so easily. I was sensei to the Yondaime and I know potential when I see it. I think Naruto has as much potential as the Yondaime did, and I intend to teach him all the Yondaime's jutsus. A slight grin touched Hayashi's lips. Except for the Hiraishin, of course. Jiraiya shrugged. Well, of course. What's the Hiraishin? Naruto asked curiously. And why won't you teach it to me? It was the Yondaime's signature jutsu, his own creation, and his masterpiece. Jiraiya sounded almost wistful. It was what made him a ninja legend and the yellow flash of Konoha. That one jutsu was so powerful it allowed him to defeat entire armies by himself. Cool, Naruto said. Why won't you teach it to me? It's not that I won't teach it to you, kid, it's that I can't. No one else was ever able to make it work. Minato tried teaching it to me, but I could never pick it up. Even that genius Orochimaru tried to copy it but failed. Hiashi nodded. Only a truly great ninja could ever hope to master the Hiraishin. Naruto looked at Hiashi. If I could learn that jutsu, would I be good enough to be with Hinata? Hiashi looked at the boy. Yes, if you could work the Hiraishin, I would acknowledge you worthy of my daughter. That's it then. I'm learning this jutsu. Jiraiya just shook his head. Kid, you're writing checks with your mouth that your body can't cash. There's no way you could learn that jutsu if I couldn't. Even if you could somehow, it would take you years. Naruto looked back at Hiashi. He couldn't be without Hinata for years, that was too cruel. He racked his brain to come up with some possible way to be able to see her. He thought about everything Hinata had told him about her family and how it worked. And he had an idea. I can make the damn thing work for me for once instead of against me. Hiashi-sama, Naruto bowed once more. I ask you to make a bargain with me. A bargain? Yes, I ask you to give me until the day of my 16th birthday to learn this jutsu. If I can learn it, you must agree to admit I am worthy of being with Hinata-chan. I also ask that you allow me to be with her as her boyfriend until that day. Hiashi shook his head. He was honestly amazed at the young ninja's boldness. He seemed to think nothing of making the most outrageous promises and requests. That is certainly asking quite a lot. What could you possibly offer that would make me even consider such a bargain? Naruto glanced at Hinata. She was looking at him fearfully. She's worth it. He decided. Just being with her makes me happy. Even if we can only have the 3 years, it's worth every risk. He looked back to Hiashi and spoke with decision. Hiashi-sama, if I cannot learn the Hiraishin by the day of my 16th birthday, I will allow you to place the caged bird seal upon my head and enter your service as a member of the Hyuga cadet branch. Naruto, no. Hinata jumped to her feet. You don't know what you're saying. She turned to her father. Please ignore him, father. Jiraiya had also jumped up. Kid, are you nuts? You'd never even heard about the Hiraishin until just now and you're willing to bet your whole future on learning it? I know what I'm doing. Naruto looked at Hinata and reached out to take a hold of her hand. Hinata-chan, you have no idea how much you mean to me. You make me so very happy, I can't bear the thought of not being with you. I would do anything just to be with you. Naruto-kun. She felt on the verge of tears. Jiraiya looked at his old teacher who was still seated. Aren't you going to say something? Sarutobi spoke. I do not agree with Naruto's decision, but it is his choice to make. He looked at Naruto. Are you sure you are ready to risk so much? Naruto nodded. I am. He looked to Hiashi. Will you make this bargain with me, Hiashi-sama? Hiashi said nothing for a moment as he carefully considered what was being offered to him. If he allowed Naruto to date his daughter, her reputation and his clans would be damaged. He was certain she would be happy, but that was not the important thing. The two of them being together for 3 years would not reflect well on either her or the clan. On the other hand, he would be given the chance to control the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He would even be able to act as a last line of defense should that ever become necessary. The power that lay within Naruto would be at the disposal of his clan. It was a difficult choice, but what decided him was the fact that he was sure Naruto could never succeed in learning the Hiraishin. It was nothing but an outrageous promise made by a boy who did not understand the consequences of what he was saying. If I agree to this, Hiashi finally answered. I expect you to at all times treat my daughter with the respect she deserves. Should I at any time learn you have harmed her or treated her disrespectfully, I shall consider our agreement breached and I will personally make you regret your actions. Is that clear? Naruto gulped. Hi, Hiashi-sama. Also, I expect my daughter to be a virgin when she marries. Both Hinata and Naruto turned a deep shade of red at that. I'm only 13. Naruto exclaimed. You will not remain 13, Hiashi said coolly. Naruto gave a quick embarrassed nod. I understand, Hiashi-sama. Hiashi slowly nodded and stood up. Very well then, under these terms, I accept your bargain, Uzumaki Naruto. He held out his hand. Naruto grasped it and shook it with Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Hinata there to bear witness. Their bargain was set. Chapter 20, a really big scroll. Once the dinner was completed, Hinata asked if she could have just a few minutes alone with Naruto before he left. Once the dinner was completed, Hinata asked if she could have just a few minutes alone with Naruto before he left. Hiashi graciously agreed. And so, the two of them had wound up alone in her bedroom. As soon as the door was shut, she grabbed onto him and finally let her emotions go. She pressed her face into his chest and wept. Why? She wailed between sobs. Naruto-kun, why did you do it? He wrapped his arms around and held her tight. Because it was the only way for me to be with you, Hinata-chan. He gently whispered to her. Please stop crying now, it's all right. But don't you understand what will happen if you lose? Naruto just nodded. I'll have the seal put on my head and I'll be a servant to the Hyuga clan for the rest of my life. He shrugged. It could be worse. She looked up at him with her tear-streaked face. How? Naruto-kun, how could it be worse? And in spite of everything, he smiled for her. Easy, I could be without you. That would be 100 times worse than anything your father could do to me with the seal. He gently wiped the tears from her cheeks. Please don't cry for me, Hinata-chan. I have been all alone for so long, that now that I finally have someone who wants to be with me, I can't go back to being alone again. He shook his head sadly. Anything would be better than that. Looking into his face, she couldn't help but feel better. Oh Naruto-kun, I'm so sorry that you are suffering because of me. Don't think that, Hinata-chan, don't ever think that. You never make me suffer, all you have done is made me really happy. His smile didn't waver. Whatever happens, we will have these 3 years together that we wouldn't have otherwise. That is precious enough to be worth any price. Besides, I expect to win this little bet. But Naruto-kun, no one but the yandere was ever able to learn this jutsu. Everyone says it's impossible to master. That's okay, Hinata-chan, he said confidently. I'm used to doing the impossible. I mean, just think about it. I got Irika-sensei to pass me and even give me the Hittite from his own head. Even though I still can't make a regular old Bushin. I fought Orochimaru one-on-one and survived. I got an elitist like Ebisu to call me his best student ever and even apologize to me. I made Chunin just 6 months out of the academy. And the most amazing thing of all? I actually got Kakashi-sensei to pick me over Sasuke team to go into battle with. Compared to all that, learning this jutsu will be a snap. I will definitely win. He was so brave. Despite his front, he had to know that the odds were very long against him. But Naruto would never show any doubts, he would always face the world with confidence. Looking at him, she felt the courage to do the same. She nodded her head and gave him a small smile. I know you will, Naruto-kun. She pressed her face to his chest again. Everything will be all right. As the three of them left, Sarutobi spoke very quietly. You know, Naruto, the Hokage cannot be under anyone's influence. He must be completely free to make whatever decision is best for the village. He cannot be beholden to anyone else. Naruto looked up and understood perfectly. So, if I get the caged bird seal, that disqualifies me, right? Sarutobi nodded sadly. I'm afraid it would, Naruto. Naruto merely shrugged. I'm not really surprised, so basically it's really all or nothing, huh? I either get my dream and the girl, or I get nothing. Kid, it's not too late to back out of this. Jiraiya said. Let's go back right now and talk to Hiashi. If you ask him, he'll release you from this agreement. That is true, Naruto. Sarutobi said. If I did that, he'd make sure I never got near Hinata-chan again. Naruto answered. No thanks. Damn it, kid, a frustrated Jiraiya growled. What makes you so damn determined to throw away your future? Naruto came to a sudden stop and both older me had come up short. Naruto looked up at Jiraiya. I know I'm not that old or experienced yet, and since I was dead last at the academy, I get that I'm not really smart either. But there's one thing my life has taught me that I know for an absolute fact. And that's when you find someone that you really truly love, you do whatever you have to be with them. With that, Naruto headed home while the two older ninja watched him go. He can be very surprising sometimes. Sarutobi took out his pipe and lit it. You know, I'm just starting to figure that out. Jiraiya admitted. Well, there's at least one bright spot to all this. Oh? What might that be? Sarutobi asked. Jiraiya pulled out his notebook and pen. This is going to make one hell of a good story. When Neji returned from his date, he was not really surprised to find Hinata there waiting for him. Seeing her there, Neji gave her a deep formal bow that was polite on its surface and mocking underneath. Good evening, Lady Hinata, have you been waiting up for me? How was your date, cousin? Hinata asked. Actually, it went quite well. 10-10 and I had a very good evening. Neji declined to mention any details. And how was your evening? He asked pleasantly. Did things go well for your boyfriend? Neji was certain things had gone badly for the Baka ninja. He still wanted to hear exactly how badly they had gone. Hinata told him. She informed of everything from the arrival of Naruto, Jiraiya, and Sarutobi up to and including Naruto's desperate bargain and her father's acceptance of it. So, from now until the day Naruto turns 16, I have my father's blessing to date him. Hinata finished. Neji just stood there amazed. Well, I knew he was a baka, I just never knew how much of one. He is actually trading his freedom away just to be your boyfriend for 3 years? Neji chuckled. He really has no sense of what a thing is worth, does he? Her hands twitched, she came very close to activating his seal. Don't mock him, she warned. Neji noted the stiffness in her stance and the tiny lines that pulled down at the edges of her mouth. My, Lady Hinata, it seems that you have finally developed some backbone. You have no idea. She said. I am going to work very hard to become a really strong kunoichi. I want to be able to help Naruto if he should ever need me. And besides, she let herself smile a bit. It's only fitting that the wife of the Hokage should be strong. She actually meant it, she actually believed the nonsense she was spouting. It seems you are picking up your boyfriend's delusions as well as his nerve. He has as much chance of becoming Hokage as he does of winning this bet. And there I agree with you. Hinata enjoyed seeing the rare look of confusion on her cousin's face. In any case, cousin, I didn't wait for you to discuss Naruto. I wanted to make sure you got your new assignment for tomorrow. They've sent me my first assignment as a chunin? He asked eagerly. Not exactly. Hinata handed him a sheet of paper. He took a look at it. What is this? He demanded. What does it look like? It looks like a training schedule for all the clan children ages 5 to 7. Neji stated. Hinata nodded. That's exactly what it is. I spoke to my father about you earlier. Neji sent her a dark look which she pointedly ignored. Since you seem to have enough free time to be concerned about my personal life, I thought we should find something for you to do with all that spare time. My father agreed that you have been given far too much leeway and need to be reminded of your proper place. From now on, whenever you are in the village you will spend your mornings training the cadet children basic juken. Is this a joke? Neji demanded. Any competent cadet member can do this. This will take away significant training time. Your time belongs to the clan and to the village before it belongs to you. Hinata reminded him. For all your complaints about destiny, you seem to have forgotten that. Father feels it's time you were reminded. I see, he answered quietly. You really have started to grow up, haven't you, Lady Hinata? You've truly begun acting like a main branch Hyuga. This is your little payback, isn't it? No, Neji, she said sweetly. This is only the start. With that she walked away and left him. Neji slowly crumpled the paper before heading to his room and to bed. The following day Naruto and a couple clones brought all his things to his new home. Since the house was furnished, he just brought clothes and personal effects. It felt sorta strange to have so much space all to himself. Early in the afternoon Jiraiya arrived with a massive scroll. It was about the same size as the forbidden scroll Naruto had stolen out of the tower. Here you go, kid. I suggest you take very good care of this scroll. There are only 2 like it in the whole world. The other one is locked up in a secret room in the tower. Be very careful who you tell about this, any of the ninja villages would pay a fortune to get their hands on it. Naruto took the huge scroll from him. Whoa! So how many jutsus are in this thing? 10? 15? 20? Jiraiya shook his head. Try one, kid. Just one? Jiraiya nodded. This is the scroll containing the Hiraishin no Jutsu. Naruto looked at the thing. So most of it is probably blank, right? Why don't you try opening it and see for yourself? Naruto did just that. He noticed that the formulas and instructions were written in depressingly small size. There was a lot of material here. He began unwinding the scroll to see just how much. He kept unwinding. Then had to unwind some more, and some more. He kept right on going, there were no breaks in the handwriting. He wound up unrolling it almost the very end. On his living room floor was a pile of the most complex formulas and instructions he had ever laid eyes on. Oh, you have got to be kidding me! Naruto cried out. You finally starting to get some idea of how hard this is gonna be? You know, kid, it's still not too late to get out of this. Naruto shook his head stubbornly. I won't go back on my word, and no way will I give up being with Hinata-chan. Well then, kid, I wish you a lot of luck. Hey! Aren't you going to help me, Hiraishin? I already told you, kid, I could never learn it. If you have a specific question with a specific instruction, I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, you are on your own. Well, can't you give me some advice or something? How about prayer and a few offerings to Kami? Gee, thanks, a lot of help you turn out to be. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Alright, kid, I'll give you some general advice. First, don't try and study everything at once. Break everything up into sections and attack each one separately and figure out as much as you can. Hopefully you can eventually get enough pieces to put the whole together. You mean like a jigsaw puzzle? Sort of. Second, I'm sure you already know you can use Kagebushin as a way to learn more than normal. Naruto nodded. Whenever you study, make Kagebushins, but no more than 9 or 10. But why? I can make a couple hundred and learn a lot more. Jiraiya shook his head. That's a good idea with taijutsu or working on hand signs you already know. For anything involving repetition, the more clones the better. However, to learn something new, especially something requiring comprehension and interpretation, the more clones you use, the more confusing it will become when you reintegrate all of them. The studying does no good if the knowledge comes back to you in a jumbled mess. So no more than 10 clones, maximum. Naruto wasn't happy, but he nodded. And third, work on it every single night you're in the village. Even if you're tired and sick of the thing, work on it, at least an hour. You may have a lot of time to study it, but you're going to need it. This thing is going to frustrate the hell out of you, kid. I'll guarantee you that right now. But no matter how much of a struggle it gets to be, you have to keep going. Now roll this thing back up and I'll show you a hiding place for it. Thanks, Hiraishin. Kid, don't call me that. Naruto smiled at him. It's that or pedophile. Why don't you just call me Jiraiya-sensei, like every other student I've ever had? Naruto seemed to think about it. Nah, I think Hiraishin suits you better. Over the following week, events took place outside Konoha that would have important effects on the future. Kabuto was whistling a happy tune as he sat waiting for the information to download. Near him were a few bodies sprawled out on the floor. Outside the research area were the bodies of all the guards and workers who had been here. It was a bit of a shame, they had served Orochimaru faithfully, but the deaths were necessary to hide his identity. The Leaf Village had enough reason to come after him without knowing he had all Orochimaru's secrets too. People had talked for a long time about extending modern communications. People talked about one day picking up a phone in Konoha and calling someone in Kumo and actually being able to talk to them. Kabuto thought that would be absolutely amazing, but didn't think it would ever happen. Thousands of miles of easily cut or tapped phone lines running all over the continent? Sure. The powers that be would want that. You might as well wish for paved roads leading between all the towns and cities. Technically, it was even possible to connect computers to allow the fast transfer of information over vast distances. Now that could be useful. As compared to the many small computer webs found in individual cities, all computers could be made into a single vast web, perhaps spanning the whole world. Of course, the idea of information passing quickly and easily over borders would give all the Kages and great lords heart attacks. There were some advantages to how things were now, the main one being security, of course. Orochimaru had been obsessed with security and had kept all his information on a single computer system in his alpha base. There were no backups anywhere else. When the download was at last complete, Kabuto took out the single precious disk and put it in a plastic case. He then went over to the gasoline bomb and tapped down on the starter. It began to tick. In 10 minutes this entire base would begin to burn. He would have all of Orochimaru's information. He left the research area, still whistling. He already had Orochimaru's ring, which meant there was just one last thing to take care of. He had been the first to make it back to the base. He had immediately told everyone that they had won a crushing victory and that Orochimaru was staying in the ruins a few days to savor his triumph. Everyone had believed him without question. Especially Kimimaro. He'd never doubted that Orochimaru would triumph. He'd wanted desperately to be there to fight for his lord, but the onset of his illness had made it impossible. Kimimaro had been grateful when Kabuto offered to try a new treatment on him. He'd said not a word as Kabuto gave him a sedative. Kabuto was standing over an unconscious Kimimaro. According to the heart monitor, he was doing well. As Kabuto prepared an injection, he talked to the unconscious ninja. "You know, it really is a shame that this has to be your end. You were ready to become Orochimaru-sama's new host, a truly noble sacrifice, only to be cheated by disease." Kabuto shook his head sadly. "Then you weren't even allowed to at least die in battle fighting for Orochimaru. Fate really can be cruel at times." He found a vein and pushed the plunger down. "If I thought I might be able to cure you, I'd ask you to come with me. But as it is, you only have a few months left. A few months of pain and watching yourself slowly expire, without even the condolence of being of some use to the one we called master. This is much better. A quick painless end, and you die thinking Orochimaru alive and victorious. I know you would thank me for this if you could." Kabuto stood there and watched the heartbeat slow, and finally stop. He reached over and clicked off the monitor. As he exited the base, he heard the gas bomb go off. Sighing, he began to leap through the trees and started his long journey. He was sure Master Sasori would be happy with the gifts he was bringing him. "Well now," Kisame said. "This is the first time we've all been gathered together since Orochimaru betrayed us. At least his death provides us some small good fortune." Sasori growled from a blocky body. "Doesn't make up for the bad news though, yeah." Deidara replied. "The one tail is dead." Itachi said calmly. "What are we to do?" All eyes turned towards their leader. The possibility that one of the Jinchuriki would be killed prior to extraction was always present. "This does not affect the ultimate goal of our organization." Their leader replied with ease. Kisame grinned. "So, what now, fearless leader?" Pain answered. "I have a plan." Chapter 21, Return to Normal. The Council of Wind sat silently at the table. Their leader was a ninja named Suleiman. Suleiman was a few years older than Sarutobi and the leader of one of Suna's great clans. Had he wanted to, he likely could have been the fourth Kazekage. But he had always preferred working behind the scenes. But now, with the fourth murdered, their secret weapon lost, and their army shattered, he was being forced to lead. The 7 days ceasefire will be at an end tomorrow. We must make a decision. We must either accept the terms or continue this war. Suleiman informed them. We cannot accept the terms. Hideo shouted angrily. They are outrageous. Most of the other council members nodded their agreement. Furito decided to read some of them off. We must pay 10 billion ryu in indemnities over the next 50 years. We agree not to wage war without first receiving permission from the Leaf Village. No Sand Ninja may accept or perform any mission beyond the borders of Wind Country. There was more, but those were the main points. These terms would cripple us. We would no longer be considered one of the 5 great ninja villages. Hideo stated. I rather think that is the point. Suleiman said. Could we at least get them to modify the terms? Perhaps we can open negotiations and reach a reasonable settlement. Furito offered. Suleiman shook his head firmly. I tried that the moment we received them. I was rebuffed. The reply from Sarutobi was quite clear, there will be no negotiations. We must accept the terms or fight. Suleiman let out a weary sigh. Things could not have ended much worse. Their army had suffered 50% losses while the Leaf Mean's losses had been minimal. He had hoped that the offer of unconditional surrender would have been enough to satisfy the Hokage. If Konoha had suffered heavy casualties, it probably would have been. But with the Leaf forces still intact and strong, Sarutobi was in a position to press hard. Does Sarutobi realize that our Kazekage was murdered and that we were actually led into this war by Orochimaru? Furito asked. Suleiman nodded. He has been made aware of that fact. He states that regardless of the Kazekage's murder, the fact remains that the decision to attack Konoha with Orochimaru had been made by him. He feels we were not tricked into war but deliberately broke our alliance to attack them. He feels we have proven ourselves untrustworthy and must be weakened. Unhappy murmurs spread up and down the table. The sad fact was they had broken a treaty. Sarutobi would have been a fool to trust them again, and Sarutobi was no fool. Then it's settled, Hideo said. We must fight. Baki, Suleiman looked to him. As our general, you know the condition of our forces better than anyone. What is your opinion? Can we win or even survive a continuation of the war? Baki rose to his feet and looked at the other council members. We still have significant forces and our defenses are formidable. If it comes to a fight, I am certain we could withstand a siege for many months. Perhaps up to a year. A siege? Hideo asked unhappily. Couldn't we fight them in the field? No, Baki replied firmly. We are much too weak to have any chance in open battle. Were we to fight them in that manner, I fear it would only lead to a swift defeat. After which Suna would be destroyed. Suleiman elaborated. Just as it would be at the end of a long siege. No, I am afraid we cannot fight them. These terms will ruin us as a great power. Hideo stated. They will, for at least a generation. Suleiman said. But perhaps future generations will be able to win back what we have lost. Regardless, it is our duty to save Suna. While to resist would be brave, it would also be foolish. If we fight, the ultimate end will be the destruction of the village. Therefore, we have no choice but to surrender. Furito sighed. This treaty will make Konoha much more powerful, and reduce the number of great villages to 4. Suleiman nodded, but there was nothing he could do. By a vote of 8-1, Suna accepted the surrender terms. To the north, the end played out differently. In the castle of the Rice Daimyo, the doors to the throne room were opened. From the doorway to the raised dais, all the lords of Rice Country were lined up. As Danzo entered at the head of a contingent of 20 Leaf Means, the lords bowed low to him. Danzo knew Sarutobi didn't fully trust him. The Hokage lad allowed him this honor as a way to show favor and keep him tied close. What Danzo thought of that he would keep to himself, but even if he did not smile, he was enjoying this. He would have liked to have strutted into the room and towards the throne. With his shattered body, he couldn't manage to strut. Instead, he walked slowly and with all the dignity of a conqueror. When Danzo at least reached the foot of the dais, the Rice Daimyo stood and came down the steps. The man certainly looked the part. He had on bulky and flowing robes of purple and gold. He carefully moved the robes out of the way as he went down on both knees. He slowly removed his ceremonial sword and offered it up. As daimyo and ruler of Rice Country, I submit. With his single-arm Danzo reached out and took the sword from him. As the representative of the Lord Hokage and of the daimyo of Fire Country, I hereby accept your submission. All of this was merely ceremony. The surrender had already been negotiated. Sarutobi considered the man to be nothing but Orochimaru's unwilling victim. As such, he was being shown great mercy. Rice Country was being annexed to Fire, and the man would no longer be the daimyo of an independent nation. However, he would continue to rule from his castle, the only difference being he would do so as a governor under the authority of the Fire Lord. The surrender marked the official end of the war against Sound. Most of the Sound Nin had died in the streets of Konoha. The few remaining survivors had fled. Everything that Orochimaru had spent his lifetime building was being dismantled and destroyed. So where have you been the last week? Naruto asked. He and Jiraiya were in the backyard of his new home. Believe it or not, kid, I have responsibilities that involve things other than you. Naruto frowned. Like what? Peeping at the women's bathhouse? No, of course not, Jiraiya answered. I do that strictly on my own time. Whatever, Naruto muttered. So Ero-sennin, I'm still waiting for my first mission as a Chunin. I kept asking the old man, but all he would say was that I had to wait to talk to you. Jiraiya nodded. That's because for the next few months you won't be going on any missions. Say what? What do you mean no missions? Naruto demanded. Jiraiya sighed. Why was he not surprised Naruto was making this difficult? Look, kid, we've got just under 3 years to build up your reputation and turn you into the strongest ninja in the village. That means you're not going to be going on any regular missions. The missions you go on will be especially difficult. They'll be chosen not just to enhance your reputation but to test your limits and force you to develop the skills you'll need. Super difficult missions? That sounds great. Yeah, but since these missions are going to be extra rough, you need to be ready. But I am ready, Naruto insisted. I mean, I totally kicked ass during the invasion. Why do you think the old man promoted me? You did very well, Jiraiya admitted. And your promotion was well deserved. But despite being a Chunin now, the fact remains you have some very basic weaknesses that we need to address before you start going on missions. Like what? Well, your most glaring weakness is your taijutsu. Ebisu was able to make it passable, but that isn't near good enough. You're going to teach me taijutsu? Not just any taijutsu. Jiraiya said proudly. Kid, you're going to learn hermit style, one of the rarest and most demanding styles known to man or frog. Naruto gave him an odd look and mouthed the words, man or frog? Also, technically, I won't be the one teaching you. Oh great, so you're dumping me just like Kakashi-sensei did. No kid, I'm going to let a specialist train you in the mornings while I take care of other responsibilities. Then I'll come back in the afternoon to work on teaching you other skills and jutsus. Naruto looked at the man suspiciously. Are you really going to teach me jutsus? I sure am, kid, but now let me bring in your teacher. Now before I do that, I'm going to give you a fair warning. For a change, Jiraiya looked extremely serious. Fukasaku-sensei can be very strict. Don't give him attitude, and don't make up any of your pet names for him, or you'll get the ruler. The ruler? You'll find out, kid, trust me. He may seem different, but he taught me the hermit style and I guarantee you he'll teach you a lot too. So you ready to meet him? Sure. Naruto expected Jiraiya to leave and return with his new teacher. Instead, the old hermit bit down on his thumb and ran through some hand signs. He slammed his hand down on the ground and there was a puff of smoke. When the smoke cleared, there was a frog sitting there. He was easily the weirdest looking frog Naruto had ever seen. He had on a black kimono and had a gray beard and mustache. The frog looked up at him and then turned to Jiraiya. So, is this Naruto? Yeah. Jiraiya said. Naruto was a bit surprised to be hearing a frog talk. He had seen a talking turtle before though, and Kakashi had mentioned that his nin dogs could talk. He looks pretty stupid. The frog said. Hey! Naruto shouted. Who are you calling stupid, you dumb frog? Jiraiya closed his eyes and began massaging his temples. Kid, you shouldn't have said that. The frog eyed Naruto up and down. Jiraiya-chan, why don't you leave me with the smart mouth here? Alright, but try not to hurt him too bad. No promises. Jiraiya sighed. Kid, remember what I said, be polite. He shunshined away. Naruto looked down unhappily at the frog. No way am I learning anything from a frog. Well, not with that attitude, you're not. The frog took a wooden ruler from his back and held it like a samurai sword. Now for your very first lesson. The frog leapt up to Naruto's face and smacked his cheek with a loud thwack. Ow! Naruto slapped a hand over a reddening cheek. That hurt. As I was saying, the frog continued. Your first lesson, I am Fukasaku-sensei. You will never refer to me as anything else, especially not, dumb frog. Now Jiraiya-chan asked me to come teach you the hermit style. Now we can do this the hard way, or, well, there's really only the hard way. Naruto was glaring at the frog. Forget it. No way am I learning anything from you. What would a frog know about fighting anyway? Oh? You don't think a frog can fight? That's right, Naruto said. Very well, let's have a spar. If you can hit me just once, I'll leave you alone. Fine, Naruto swung down trying to hit him. Only to have the frog land on his wrist, run up his arm and slap him across both cheeks with his ruler, thwack, thwack. Oh, that's it. Naruto shouted and went all out to show the frog just who was in charge. Jiraiya returned in the early afternoon to find a panting and exhausted Naruto lying flat on his back with Fukasaku sitting on his chest. I take it the day went well? Jiraiya asked. He reminds me of you. Fukasaku said. He looked down at the panting ninja and held his ruler threateningly. So, what is my name? A weary Naruto looked up at him. Fukasaku-sensei. Good, the frog nodded. Tomorrow we start with hermit style. With a puff of smoke, he disappeared. Jiraiya came over and helped a sore Naruto back up to his feet. I told you to be polite. Naruto nodded. Man, I never knew frogs could be so tough. They can be very surprising, Jiraiya agreed. He also began to smile. So, you have a newfound respect for frogs, huh? I sure do. Well, that's good. How would you like to be able to summon them? Yash, thank you both for doing this. Tenten smiled at her former sensei. We are both happy to. Are you sure this is wise, sensei? Neji asked as he pushed the wheelchair. I thought your stay in the hospital would be extended. Guy nodded wearily. The doctors speak of 4 or 5 months, but I will be there only 1. If I am still in the hospital in more than 1 month's time, I will run 500 laps around the village backwards. Neji and Tenten shared an amused look. It seemed that despite all he had been through, he would be all right. Are you sure about doing this right now? Tenten asked. I am sure they would understand if you waited until you were stronger. Guy vehemently shook his head. Though I lack the strength to walk there, I am strong enough to do what must be done, and I have delayed too long already. His 2 former students did not try and talk him out of it. Truthfully, they were both happy to help him. They owed a duty as well. As they went through the streets, people stopped to bow to them or applaud them. Their faces were all well known within the village, especially Guy's. Normally Guy would be gushing at all the praise he was receiving. But he seemed a little subdued, almost embarrassed by it. At long last the 3 of them arrived at a small in the northern end of the village. Though he grunted from the exertion, Guy stood up and knocked on the door. When the door opened, two surprised people greeted him. There was a very small dark-haired woman and a man with some incredibly thick eyebrows. Though it hurt, Guy gave them a deep and respectful bow. Standing behind him, Tenten and Neji did the same. I have come to apologize to you and to ask your forgiveness, Guy told Lee's parents. I was Lee's sensei and I failed him. The parents were silent for a moment, and then the father spoke in a quiet. Mato Guy, we know you did the best you could for our son, and you avenged him. You have both our forgiveness and our thanks. Guy lifted his head and nodded gratefully. Your son was my precious protege, I will always miss him. Together the 5 people present remembered and honored the fiery and youthful Rock Lee. He would forever enjoy the springtime of youth. Having signed the summoning contract, Naruto bit down on his thumb and ran through the hand signs like Jiraiya had shown him. He poured in as much chakra as he could, wanting to summon a really big frog. Kochios no jutsu, instantly there was a huge puff of smoke. Naruto looked eagerly as it cleared to see just how big a frog he had summoned. Hi there, you got any chips? Naruto looked down to see a red and black frog about the size of a small dog. Aw man. I wanted to summon a big one. Jiraiya didn't say it, but he was impressed. Summoning Gamakichi, the boss toad's own offspring, was pretty damn good for your very first try. I can already see you're going to need to work really hard at this, kid. Gamakichi looked over to Jiraiya and then back to Naruto. So, are there any chips around here or what? Another week passed. As it became clear the war was over, repairs began to speed up and life began to return to normal. In his office, the Hokage and Jiraiya were having a private meeting. How is Naruto's training going? Not bad, Jiraiya admitted. He is starting to pick up the hermit style and he is summoning down. I've started to show him the Rasengan and he's doing pretty well with that. A few months and he might just be worth something. Sarutobi nodded. Have all the strike teams retuned? They have, Sarutobi said. All of Orochimaru's facilities have been destroyed and all his prisoners have been freed. Although we did not manage to capture many of his people, most of them fled upon hearing of Orochimaru's death. Can't say I blame them, considering the research they were involved in. Jiraiya paused for a bit. There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about, it involves Akatsuki. Sarutobi gave the man his full attention, anything that involved Uchiha Itachi always drew his full attention. Yes? It's rather interesting, they had just started becoming more active recently. And now they've gone completely off the map. My spy networks have been tracking them, they've been a high priority. Now all at once they seem to have disappeared. That is unusual, do you have any idea why they've suddenly become inactive? Well, given the timing, I have to think it has something to do with either the war or with Orochimaru's death. Given that he was once a member, I suspect the latter to be the most likely cause, but what the real connection is? I couldn't even begin to guess. Sarutobi lit his pipe and took a couple puffs as he considered. Well, whatever the reason, if they have decided to become inactive, I think we can call that good news. Probably, Jiraiya was slow to agree. But I've got this nasty little feeling that we'll have to pay for this good fortune later on. In his hidden base in Rain Country, he looked at his plans and nodded. The new plan was just starting to go into effect. It would likely take a couple years before he would begin to see the results. That was all right, he knew how to be patient. In the meantime, he would work on increasing his organization's wealth and on destroying Hanzo and his power structure. Before long he would be the ruler of this country, and someday after that he would be the ruler of the world. Pain again nodded. Operation Legacy was underway. Chapter 22, A Mission. 3 months had passed. Hinata was humming happily in the kitchen. The beef stir-fry was just about done and so was the rice. Now she just had to finish with the vegetables. Naruto poked his head into the kitchen. That smells really good. Is it ready yet, Hinata-chan? Almost Naruto-kun, she told him. But I'm so hungry, he whined. I'm starving. He put his hands on his stomach and began to sway back and forth as though on the verge of collapse. Hinata put a hand over her mouth as she began giggling. She loved his antics, and how he didn't care if he looked silly at times. Dinner will be ready in just a few more minutes, Naruto-kun, can you hold out that long? He groaned but nodded. Hey Hinata-chan, when are you going to make me some more of that delicious ramen? I'll make you some more next week, Naruto-kun. I made you some just yesterday. Why can't we have it more than just once a week? Because it's not healthy for you, she told him. You need more protein and vitamins. Now the stir-fry is almost done, why don't sit down at the table and I'll bring dinner out? As they sat down to a nice dinner, Naruto was soon regaling her with his latest taijutsu move and about the super cool jutsu Jiraiya was showing him. As they ate and talked, Hinata reflected on how much she'd been enjoying the past few months. Ever since that dinner with her father, her life had almost become a dream. She had always wanted to be acknowledged by Naruto and to be able to date him. She had that now. Not only was she dating him, but she even had her father's blessing to do so openly. She was determined to spend as much time with him as possible. Father had taken a new interest in her since the Chunin exams and he was now training her. Whenever she was in the village, she would train in the mornings and afternoons and then she would come be with Naruto. It was heaven. They would usually go out on Saturday nights, the rest of the time she would come over and cook for him. Then they would just sit and talk or listen to music or she would tell him stories. She would stay with him until she was required to go home. To be truthful, she would have liked to have taken her things and moved into one of his spare bedrooms. But she was sure her father wasn't quite that understanding. To say nothing of the fact she didn't think she would have the nerve to actually ask Naruto something like that. All the time she had been watching him, she had imagined what it would be like to be his girlfriend. The reality was even better than what she'd imagined. Since the death of her mother, she had grown up in a cold and sterile environment. Everything was proper, everything was formal, even when there was no one else to see. Being with Naruto was like seeing the difference between night and day. He was warm, kind, and was always making her laugh. He cared about what she thought and actually listened to her when she spoke. Whenever she was with him, she was always smiling and happy. Except when one thought occurred to her. Have you been making any progress with the Hiraishin no Jutsu? She asked. Naruto stopped eating and his light mood seemed to evaporate some. Not really, Hinata-chan. I work on it every single night, but it doesn't make sense to me. It's so totally complicated, I just can't seem to make any headway. Seeing the worried look on her, he suddenly gave her a big smile. But I'm sure I'll figure it out. Isn't Jiraiya helping you with this? Naruto shook his head. Not really, I've asked him a few questions about some of the formulas. But he's told me that I'm going to have to figure it out on my own. She didn't like that at all. I thought you were his apprentice. Why isn't he helping you more? He helps me a lot more than Kakashi ever did. I see him every afternoon and he works with me teaching jutsu and chakra control and gives me lessons on being a master spy. A master spy? Hinata sounded a bit surprised. Aren't you more of a combat type? She adored Naruto, but even she was willing to admit that with his loud nature and in-your-face attitude he did not seem cut out for surveillance. Actually, Hinata-chan, I know a little something about hiding and being invisible when I need to. Memories of hiding from angry crowds or sneaking about to set up a prank came to mind. I'm actually learning a lot from Aro-sennin, just not about the Hiraishin. He says I'm going to have to figure it out on my own. I kind of think he didn't do too well when he tried to learn it. Can I help? Thanks, Hinata-chan, but I'm good with formulas, she blurted out. Maybe I could help with that, at least a little bit. That's really nice of you, Hinata-chan. But you already cook all these great meals for me and I couldn't ask you to study too. He made a face. That would be asking way too much. Naruto-kun, she looked at him seriously. You never asked me to cook for you. I offered to. Being able to give you a good nutritious meal makes me very happy. I want you to learn this jutsu, Naruto. If I could help you with it, then that would make me very happy too. He thought about it. Are you sure, Hinata-chan? She nodded. I'm very sure, Naruto-kun. You're only in this situation because of me. I want to do everything I can to make sure you don't end up with a seal. As he watched her face darken just a tad. I want for us to be together one day. And I would be very happy to help in any way I can. And slowly, he nodded. Alright, I'd like the help. The following day found Sakura heading towards the bridge, which was Team Kakashi's usual meeting spot. Her feet dragged. She didn't want to spend another couple of hours with one teammate silently brooding and the other cursing up a storm as they waited for their sensei. As she was walking down a street, she spotted a blonde running past. He was in some baggy shorts and a dark t-shirt. Oh, and there was a toad with a beard and a kimono sitting on top of his head. Naruto! She shouted. Naruto pulled up and looked around. Seeing her, he smiled and jogged over to her. Just seeing that big goofy smile made her happy. It had been way too long. Sakura-chan! Hey, it's good to see you. It's good to see you too, Naruto. Where have you been? I've hardly seen you since you made Chunin. Oh, I've just been training like crazy. How about you? Sakura let out a sigh. I've been on a bunch of missions, nothing too exciting. I have a new teammate now. Naruto was about to ask something when the toad spoke up. That's enough chit-chat. Are you a ninja or a gossiping old woman? Get back to running. Hi Fukasaku-sensei. Sorry Sakura-chan, I've got to go. He turned and started running again in the original direction. I'll see you later. He shouted back to her. I'll see you. Sakura stood there and watched as he quickly disappeared from sight. Watching him go, she thought about all the times he had chased after her. All the times he'd asked her for dates or tried to talk to her. And now he couldn't even find just a few minutes to talk to her. How things had changed. When she got to the bridge, she was reminded again that things were different now. On one rail was Sasuke, on the other was her new teammate. They were both pointedly looking at the water and not at each other. She screwed on a fake smile and approached them. Once again, she would try and keep the team at least functioning. Good morning, Sasuke. HN, was his only reply. He didn't even bother to look at her. Sighing, she approached her other teammate. Good morning, Tayuya. Tayuya at least looked at her and acknowledged her existence. Good morning, Sakura. She raised her voice just a little. And how is the Prince of Pity today? Sasuke stiffened a little at the dig but refused to say anything. He had often argued with Naruto, but preferred to treat Tayuya as though she didn't exist. Please don't, Sakura said quietly. She was desperate to maintain whatever fragile peace was still left. Whatever, Tayuya shrugged and looked back down at the water. Sakura decided to wait on Tayuya's side this morning. She already knew Sasuke would not appreciate her trying to get close to him. When Tayuya had been assigned to their squad, Sakura had been a bit worried about having an older kunoichi competing with her for his attention. Well, that at least had not been a problem. Flashback. Sasuke had gone directly up to his new teammate after having her introduced by Kakashi. I hope you plan on spending your time training and not wasting it trying to ask me out on dates. Sakura had flinched to hear the contempt in his voice. Tayuya had frowned at him. What the fuck makes you think I'd want to go out with an arrogant bastard like you? Sasuke, Sakura, and even Kakashi had gaped open-mouthed at her. Sakura had once heard Hinata insult Sasuke while defending Naruto. But she had never seen, frankly she had never imagined, a girl openly disking Sasuke. "Don't insult Sasuke-kun," she'd yelled almost out of reflex. Tayuya had looked at her. Why? Will it hurt his fucking feelings? Is he a ninja or a precious little princess? Sasuke had given her a cold look. "I am Uchiha Sasuke, heir and last son of the mighty Uchiha clan." Tayuya had smiled. So? That was how it had started. From there it had gotten worse. Tayuya simply refused to treat Sasuke as anything special. She didn't acknowledge him as the team's leader. She didn't recognize him as a genius or even as a particularly strong ninja. In fact, she went out of her way to point out to him that she had far more experience than he did and was a stronger ninja. She made no effort to get to know him or to get him to like her. Naruto had tried to be Sasuke's rival. Tayuya didn't want to be Sasuke's anything. Sasuke's response to all this was to ignore her as much as possible, which led to some very awkward and quiet times. Sakura had originally thought it was all a misunderstanding. She assumed that once Tayuya got to actually know Sasuke she would realize how great he was. She had decided to have a talk with her alone. "You should be nicer to Sasuke-kun," Sakura had told her new teammate. "Why?" Tayuya had asked. Because he is a great and amazing ninja." Tayuya had looked at her unimpressed. "If he's so great, why is he still a genin? I've heard that this Naruto I'm replacing was promoted to Chunin. If Mr. fucking Wonderful is so great, why wasn't he? Sasuke-kun just hasn't had the chance to prove himself yet. If he hasn't proven anything yet, how can you say he's amazing? What has he actually done?" Sakura thought about it. He survived facing a really powerful ninja named Haku. I've never heard of this Haku, and just surviving a fight doesn't impress me. You're supposed to survive. If you were there that means you survived too. Sakura opened her mouth, but didn't say that she had spent the whole mission without ever throwing a single blow. He fought Orochimaru and almost defeated him. Tayuya burst out laughing. Is that what he fucking believes? She howled and clutched her ribs. What is so funny? Sakura demanded. Orochimaru-sama was one of the most powerful ninja alive. Do you honestly think a little pissant genin could survive 10 seconds against him in a real fight? I fought Orochimaru, so did all my old teammates. That was his way of testing us to see if we were worthy of his interest. Let me just guess, at some point Sasuke was completely paralyzed, right? Sakura could remember that moment. She and Sasuke had both thought they'd died. Their bodies had been completely rigid. Seeing Sakura nod, Tayuya continued. And once he decided he was interested, he gave Sasuke a little gift, didn't he? A curse mark to give him extra power and bind him to Orochimaru. How do you know about the curse seal? I used to have one too, so did all my teammates. He's actually damn lucky. 90% of the ones who get the seal die. That's why Sasuke survived and why Orochimaru didn't kill him. He wanted him alive to use later on. The idea that anyone could just toy with Sasuke didn't sit well with her. The very next day he single-handedly defeated a trio of sound ninja. Single-handed? Inner Sakura asked. Didn't Lee and Ino Pig's team help? Quiet, Sakura thought. I'm trying to make a point. So, he beat Dosu, Kin, and Zakuha? Well, that's not too bad. But I'll bet he used the power of his curse seal. I could have beaten those three easily with my curse seal too. That was true, Sakura thought. Sasuke had gained incredible and frightening strength and overwhelmed his opponents. If he'd fought them without the seal, could have defeated them? So, what else has he done? Tayuya asked. Sakura couldn't think of anything else that might impress the girl. He's the last member of the Uchiha clan. That would be true whether he was a weakling or not. Why am I supposed to respect him because he's the last of his clan? He's had a very hard life, Sakura defended. He saw his older brother kill his clan and has been alone ever since. Tayuya gave her a glare that made her step back. My mother was a whore who never once said she loved me and abandoned me when I was 5. I grew up in an orphanage where all the kids told me I was a whore's daughter until I was 9. Then I was sold to one of Orochimaru's recruiters and was sent to live in the Sound Village. I won't tell you what that was like, except to say I'm damn lucky Orochimaru wanted to use me as a ninja and not as a test subject. Tayuya shook her head in disgust. Your little princess may have had a hard time growing up, that doesn't mean he's the only one. It also doesn't mean he gets to have the whole world kiss his ass. He had it rough, too bad. But he needs to deal with it and move on. Sakura was stunned. She had never thought anyone could learn about Sasuke's tragic past and not be moved by it. Tayuya turned to go. I'm not like you, I don't take shit from people. And I sure as hell won't thank them for it. What do you mean? Tayuya turned to look back at her. What do you think I mean? He shits all over you and you just smile and ask for more. Sasuke-kun does not do that. Of course, he does, Tayuya laughed again. He has no respect for you at all. But then why should he, when you have no respect for yourself? With that Tayuya left. Sakura had just stood there. In the time since she had finally stopped asking Sasuke for dates. When Tayuya had loudly and profanely demanded Kakashi train all his students, Sakura had backed her up. She began training much harder and slowly begun a wary friendship with Tayuya. That didn't mean she gave up all hope of winning over Sasuke. Her old dream was one that was very hard to let go of, but bit by bit she was starting to. Even if they would never be together, she still hoped to at least be a friend to him. But she was starting to wonder if even that was possible. With Naruto's departure, there was no one who could make Sasuke actually engage in a conversation. He had only become more and more withdrawn. When he did talk, it was usually to make a demand that Kakashi teach him a particular jutsu or to register some complaint. More and more all he seemed to care about was getting stronger. His friends, his village, his team, all those things came second to his acquiring more strength. Sakura leaned back against the rail and shut her eyes. Seeing Naruto this morning had reminded her how things had used to be. It had been rough at times, and never easy, but in the end it had been fun. All the fun in her life seemed to have left along with her blonde teammate. That day the Lord Hokage had a private meeting with none other than the Fire Lord himself. When the meeting ended, he sent for Jiraiya. I hear you had a meeting with the daimyo. Jiraiya said as he entered the office and took a seat. The Hokage nodded as he lit his pipe. Your sources are as good as ever. So, what's this about? Jiraiya asked. It must be pretty important if you've called me here. The Fire Lord has received a number of angry petitions from various lords, merchants, and bankers. It seems that one of our ninja has been acquiring a great number of debts and refusing to pay them. The Fire Lord finally decided that as an honorable man he needed to rectify the situation. As such, he has agreed to pay off all debts that this certain ninja owed, which means the ninja is now in debt to him for the sum of 7 million ryu. 7 million? How could someone run up that much debt and get away with it? I suspect no one had the courage, or the stupidity, to try and compel her to pay. Her? Jiraiya paled. Oh no. You don't mean? Sarutobi merely nodded. I am afraid that in the time Tsunade has been away her love of gambling has not changed. Neither has her rotten luck apparently. The Hokage let out a long puff of smoke. The Fire Lord insists she return to the village to meet with him and make arrangements to dispose of her debt. He's going to ask for the necklace as payment. Sarutobi nodded. If she cannot pay off her debt, then he indeed will, and he will be well within his rights to do so. Jiraiya chuckled. It'll be his funeral. No, Sarutobi said flatly. Tsunade is in the wrong here. She has taken vast sums of money that must be repaid regardless of whether she wants to or not. I believe something can be worked out, but she must come here and meet with the Fire Lord in person. He has charged us with this and we cannot refuse the request. And you expect me to find her, don't you? It won't be easy, she's very good at keeping a low profile when she wants to. If anyone can find her it would be you, Jiraiya. Jiraiya thought about it. This may take a while, is it okay if I bring someone along? When Jiraiya arrived that afternoon, he had a big smile on his face. Naruto immediately knew something was up. Pack your bags, kid, Jiraiya said. We've got a mission. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfiction. Looking forward to having you on board again.